So then under the roof deck, we're going to foam that so it's enveloped with foam insulation. But our insulation machine was up in New York State. And the goal was to have that insulation machine there and out of the way before they started putting the steel roof on. But there was a ice storm in New York State, delayed it getting down, and so it got there a few weeks later than what we had anticipated. So the church had hired a contractor. Our builders had never put on the hidden fastener standing seam steel roof before. He was going to show them how to put it on and work with them putting it on. That roofing contractor slid off the roof. And he landed on his feet on top of that delayed insulation trailer.
Wow.
He was really glad for God's delay. It wasn't long after that, the builders had opportunity to witness to him. The pastor had the opportunity to lead him to Christ. Never forget that with God, that timing is far more important than time. We make plans, and when our plans don't come together, sometimes we get really frustrated. But we need to remember that we need to follow God's timing and God's plans. Down the road from the church, there was a lady that had terminal cancer. She wasn't part of the church, but the church had been praying for the neighbor there to the church. Two of the builders' wives went and visited her, and they had an opportunity to lead her to Christ. Not long after that, the pastor had the opportunity to lead the man to Christ. And I say the man to Christ because they lived together for 29 years. And now they're married, or now they're saved, and they realize they need to get married. With her terminal cancer, it was hard for her to get around, but she was able to get in their van. They came and sat under a big oak tree there. She sat in the van for most of the service, but she was able to get out and stand for the ring exchange. They got married there on the church property under the oak tree, and 2 weeks later she was with her Savior. But she went there obedient with her Savior. The building ministries is much more than just building buildings. The building ministries is really building into lives also. Berean Baptist Church, Fort Ashby, West Virginia. This particular building was actually built in a floodplain. I saw pictures of the building where steel plates across the doors and water almost to the top of the steel plates. One of the deacons got a call early in the morning on a Wednesday morning and was told our church building's on fire. He went down there, the police was there, the fire department was there. He said to the policeman, "Do you have any idea what happened?" He said, "Yes, I have him in the back seat of my car." His ex-wife attended the church. When she heard that her church building had burned down, she called the police and said, "I wouldn't be surprised if my ex-husband did that." They went and picked him up, and he said, "Yeah, I busted that window in there, and I poured the gas in there, and I was burning my ex-wife's church down." Wow. I had to be really careful with them the week that I was with them doing the building design planning for the new building, because they were hurting, and rightfully so, that somebody had burned their church building down. And I wasn't at all condoning that man's sin, but I was somewhat rejoicing inside because I've worked with a lot of churches that wish that they could pray for lightning. Just like that had been built in the floodplain, there's been other things over the years where a church was placed on a property to where they weren't able then to put any additions on. And now it doesn't condone that man's sin, but God took something bad and he turned it into something good.
Oh, wow.
Everything backfired on him because now his wife has a brand new church building. Not only is it not in the floodplain, it's built 2 feet up above the floodplain, and it's connected right onto the fellowship hall that used to be across the parking lot. That's now part of the building, and they really have a much better facility to use than they had in the past. It's a little hard to see through that picture, but it used to be in there. As you look to the right and to the top, the auditorium was there, and then over to the side, all the classrooms were along the side. And so if somebody's coming in and out of those classrooms, or you've got another class going on in the auditorium area, and their restroom situation wasn't good, and they have a much better ministry facility now than they did to begin with. Curtis Baptist Church, Curtis, Michigan. You see the steeple there, the portion of the building just behind the steeple was put there back in the early 50s, clear back in the Hiawatha days. It was a barn that was moved in onto the property and made into a church building. Well, all these years they never had a baptistry in the church. They would go to a lake and baptize. We were there with them in February, myself and another missionary builder, and we went to a local restaurant for breakfast one morning, and the bantering in February going on in the restaurant was whether the ice was going to be off the lake in April or whether the ice was going to be off the lake in May. There's an elderly couple that got saved and was baptized. Now, they didn't cut a hole in the ice to baptize them, but the lake was still pretty cold when they got baptized. And they said to the pastor, "Why don't we have a baptistry in our church?" He says, "Well, we just never put one in." Well, they wrote a check for $5,000 and said, "Here, let's get a baptistry fund started for in the church building." So we assisted them in putting an addition on to where they could put a baptistry in and some other rooms along with that. Faith Baptist Church of Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. This was a church plant originally. I don't know what agency that they were with or if it was an independent church plant, but they built this building. It has the structural span concrete across, so the basement has no posts in it. And they used the basement for church area, and then the upstairs is where the church planter lived. Eventually, they were outgrowing that, and so instead of building another church building, they actually built another parsonage, and then they utilized that whole building for church. Well, it really wasn't set up. I mean, upstairs, there's still the bathroom with the tub in it. You had to use the bedrooms for your Sunday school classrooms. They were running up to 80 people in that, and there wasn't room for everybody in the basement. Someone would have to be upstairs, and so they really needed a church building. There again, remember, with God, timing is far more important than time. We assisted them with a building, tried to keep them focused on what their needs were, but they really wanted to have a building that had a Sunday school wing on it, and to have it to where they didn't have to use this building for Sunday school, so everything in the new building would be all in one area. And so we drew the building. They had gotten bad information from the banker they were working with, and once the mortgage went to underwriting, their payment was going to double what they were told. They couldn't afford to get into the church building. So we actually ended up, we drew it 3 times for them, paring it back, finally got them back to where they were satisfied with just what they needed. And we assisted them in building. This is an auditorium, is what they really needed, is auditorium space, and it has nursery in there and restrooms and one other room. There's actually one of the smaller buildings that we built, but in comparison to that house that they were meeting in, gives them significant more room. It was interesting working through that process. They had applied for the John C. Lasko Fund grant. That they often give thousands of dollars to churches that are building a new auditorium. And in the past, they tried to get the grant and they were turned down because they were going to have to borrow too much money. Well, we got the foundation laid for this building, and it was in July. We're actually at our family conference, and lead builder got a call from the pastor, and he said, "I want you share this with the builders, but keep it to yourselves until Sunday, because I want to be able to share it with the church family." There was a family that used to attend the church, but they could no longer maneuver the steps to go down to the basement or up to the upstairs, so they could no longer come. Once we laid the foundation for the new building, that family sent them $100,000 towards their building project. They applied to John C. Lasko Foundation, and they asked them for a $150,000 grant. Well, they didn't give them a $150,000 grant. They gave them a $208,000 grant. And they were able to get into this building debt-free. They had to borrow money right up front, and when they got to the end of the project, they went back to the bank, and the banker said, well, you haven't been here much to draw on your loan. He says, well, we're actually coming to pay it off. God provided for them to get into that building debt-free. That's the inside of the building. That building is designed to where we're looking at the back of the pews, we can't see it, but off to the side there's about a 12-foot piece of wall that comes out on each side. Eventually that'll be built all the way across, and the doors will be put in for the back of the auditorium to separate it from the foyer. On the end of the building there, it's designed to be able, it has a structural gable-end truss. They can take that wall out and they can put an additional 30 feet onto the end of the auditorium, which when you think of the seating capacity without platform, that's going to about double the size of their seating capacity. Out to the side of the building, there's room for them to put a Sunday school wing on. Off the back of the building, there's room to put a building up about the size of the current building there now for a multi-purpose fellowship building back there. And we set it on the property to where they have the space to be able to do that. Lakeland Baptist Church, Gilbert, Minnesota. Just back up here for just a minute. It was interesting working on this project. Our builders were there right during the peak of COVID, and we never shut down because their RVs were parked all on site. So when they walked out of their trailers, they were just out working in their yard. So they never had to stop working on the building. And so the church got occupancy of the building in the first, I think, 3 Sundays. The pastor stood in the building and preached live over the internet because it wasn't opened up for them to use it yet. And then they're able to get on it. And then we were able from there to move right up to Gilbert, Minnesota, and assist this church with putting an addition on the building there. That's the addition, multi-purpose addition. This is also designed to come out here towards us with a new auditorium in the future as they grow. This was their auditorium when I was there with them. It wasn't, the whole building was 32 feet wide. Off to the side there's an office and classrooms. They had the pews set up in the center and along the sides, and they were packing this out. That was also their fellowship hall. You see down front there, I have my office set up for helping them with the week for the building design. For Sunday, I had that all packed up and out of the way. But I preached on Sunday morning, and after I preached on Sunday morning, had a carry-in dinner. And so right after the service was done, a couple of the men come up and they picked up that first pew, which they should be fastened down, but these don't happen to be. They picked up that first pew, turned it around, backed it up, put tables in. They just started turning pews around and put tables in between them because that was the only space they had to do fellowships, was right in there in their auditorium. And so we were able to assist them in putting on the multi-purpose area. And now they've taken that old auditorium, they've made a nursery in there, and they divided it up into additional classrooms. So this gives them room for auditorium space and fellowship space. And then, as I mentioned, it's designed to be able to add on to in the future. Just a few weeks ago, I was in Katy, Texas, with a Baptist Mid-Missions church planter down there. They have this building that they're meeting in. All this, all you're not seeing here is to the right there. You see that little wall? And there's two small bathrooms there. There's an auditorium and 2 small bathrooms. Then across the parking lot, they have a double wide that they're using for Sunday school classes. And both of the buildings are really deteriorating and are becoming to where there isn't any of it that's worth trying to add on to. So I was there with them, helping them design a new building for their put on their property. It's actually going to set on the other end of the property from where these are, but assisted them in designing a new building. And so when you get an email prayer letter out, sometimes when I'm headed out on one of these, Nancy will send out a email asking for prayer that I'm going to be heading out to help a church with the building design. That's always a pretty intense week. And I'm having to be a little carefuler now than I used to be. We're all 30 years older than from the first time I was here. But something that I neglect to mention because I don't think of it most of the time, but I go back in September for a CT scan and to check. I've got a 50 millimeter aorta aneurysm, heart aneurysm. If it gets to 52 millimeters, they said I'm going to need heart surgery. So I'm trying to cut back some. So I arrived there on a Monday evening. I drove 500 miles to get there, but they were fine Monday evening. But the driving for me is not stressful. So the pastor said to me, I'll be down there to the building at 7 o'clock. I said, well, I'll be there at 9 o'clock. Because I knew that I got there at 9 o'clock on Tuesday morning, but we went until by the time working through the day and then having the church family and building committee in at night, we went until 9:30 on Tuesday night. Wednesday night, we got done early. We wrapped up about 8:45 on Wednesday night. Thursday was 9 o'clock in the morning until about 10 o'clock at night there. Friday, the same thing, 9 o'clock in the morning, and we went until about 10 o'clock at night. Saturday, we started at 9 o'clock in the morning. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we had the floor plan all planned out for the new building based on what they're doing in ministry. And so the pastor and the church family left, and I stayed there until 8 o'clock, getting the drawing completed to where I could put it up on the screen on Sunday afternoon and walk the church family through it. And so then we walked them through that, and then after the afternoon service, I had a motel reserved, about 3 hours away there in Texas, and I headed up there to be able to get started partway home. So it's always an intense week, but it's always a good week to be able to work through that. Because of the fact that what we do is if we go to a church and they already have a floor plan that they kind of like, I kindly get them to set that aside and we start working on what they're doing in ministry. Because if you put down on paper what you're doing in ministry and what you believe the Lord would have you do in ministry, the building design flows right out of that. And then when they get in the building, they don't have to try to fit the ministry into it. It's already designed for their ministry. And sometimes we've gone back and forth between the plan that they're looking at, the other plan. I worked with a church a few years ago. They had their heart set on a 40 by 100 building. They were so heart set on that, there was some miscommunication on it. I got a call from the pastor, and I said, just wanted to let you know that we ordered our building yesterday. They'd ordered a steel building 40 by 100. So they had 3 days to be able to back out of it. So Pete works with me in the office. I said, Pete, we've got to get the price together for a shell of a stick-built building that we would help them with compared to the steel building. Back in 2007, the stick-built building that we would help them with was $8,000 cheaper than the steel building. If you get up over 64 feet wide, then the steel building comes into. The other thing is with missionary builders, all of our builders are supported missionaries, and so the church isn't paying the labor. So when you can take the labor off of that, we're able to get them in significantly less expensive that way. While I was working with them on design, we were going back and forth between a 40 by 100. I was actually doing 2 drawings at once and switching back and forth. We finally got to a point, this rented grocery store that they were in, they had a fellowship between the morning service and Sunday school and the morning service, and they had an area they were using for that. And I said, well, let's go measure up the area that you're using right now. So we went and measured it up, and then we went back to the 40 by 100 building, and I said, see, this is all the room you've got left here is this. And it was about a third of the size of what they're already using. And then they said, okay, that building's not going to work. Then we're able to switch over, and we had more of a square building that was designed for what they were doing in ministry, and we're able to move forward with that. This shows you where we have church plants across North America, and also some of the building projects that it's either going or that we're have towards future. One of the highlights of ministry is Joshua, as I mentioned, is the senior pastor at First Baptist Church in Howard City. For the past now, probably about 5 years, that's where we've attended. I assisted at Maranatha Baptist Church in Cedar Springs for several years. It was a CBM revitalization. Because of my age and because of my, I've got a defibrillator, pacemaker, and one thing another. When I would, the all-night things with the teens just weren't working for me anymore. Plus, I'd be out on the road with a church, and I'd get back, and they'd have something special going on up at Howard City with the grandkids, but I didn't feel like I could go because I hadn't been to my church for a few weeks. So we finally moved and went up to Howard City and been up there with them. And I tell you, it's been a blessing. It's a unique thing to have your son as your pastor. And at church, it's always pastor. When we're together as a family, it's Joshua. But at church, it's always pastor. We went through a Sunday school series on a Sunday morning and going through a book with 12 chapters in it. We're basically teaching it to get people comfortable with teaching it, to be able to do some one-on-one discipleship. And Pat had never taught Sunday school before. Pat wanted to teach Sunday school. So he come to me and he asked if I would help him study to teach Sunday school. So Pat and I studied chapter 6 together while 1 through 5 was being taught. And then Pat and I stood side by side and we taught chapter 6 in Sunday school. Then Pat and I studied together for chapter 12, and Pat taught chapter 12 by himself. Through the process of working with Pat, his dad and mom's been gone for quite a while. In fact, Pat's got, you can see his age, Pat's got, some grown kids. Pat said, would it be okay if I adopted you as my dad? I said, yes, Pat. I said, that would be wonderful. And so Pat calls me dad at church. He went to Joshua and he said, does it bother you when I call your dad dad? He said, no, not at all. It doesn't bother me at all, Pat. Nancy and I have had the opportunity, I've been working, discipling Pat. Nancy and I have had the opportunity with Pat and his wife Darcy, to sit with them together and study the Word together. And other than seeing someone come to Christ, I tell you what, the most joyful thing in life is to see someone get grounded in the Word. And to just see the abundant spiritual growth in Pat's life and Darcy's life. Joshua has actually been discipling their son. Joshua has recently started a leadership class. He's got 7 men from the church that's involved in this leadership class. Pat is one of them, and Pat's son is another one of the 7 that's involved in this leadership class. One of the fellows that's in the class, we believe that this is probably pastoral training for him. We believe the Lord is working in their lives for them to go out into ministry. But we're going to have some men that are really grounded in the Word through that process. Here's a picture of Joshua and Amy and Olivia, Benson, and Amaya. We're so thrilled to have those 3 grandchildren. Joshua and Amy were married for 10 years, and before they were able to have any children. And Olivia now is 9. Benson will be 7. I believe he's 6 now, will be 7. And Amaya just turned 5. And it's special to have them in our lives. And again, it's a blessing to have Joshua as our pastor. And it's a unique thing for him to be chairman of the board of Continental Baptist Missions. He grew up on a mission field in the RV out with the building ministry. When he went to college, he started out up at Northland Baptist Bible College. While he was there, he went on extension to a CBM church plant and graduated CBM church plants. From there, he went to Florida, went to Spurgeon Baptist Bible College for 1 semester. While he was there, he worked with a CBM church plant there in Polk City, Florida. And then while he was in Florida, our church planter from Connecticut spoke to the CBM banquet and visited with Joshua while he was at the banquet. That summer, Joshua had some flight miles saved up from some mix-ups on some flights and stuff, so he flew to Connecticut, spent 2 weeks with the church planter in Connecticut. While he was there, the church planter found him a job, found him an apartment, and took him up to Heritage Bible Institute, which just up into Massachusetts, and was able to get enrolled there. And so on Monday nights he'd drive to Heritage Bible Institute. During the week he'd work the job and he was helping there in the church. And then from there, First Baptist in Lapeer, our sending church, was really encouraging Joshua to get back in school full time. Pastor Hill at the time was familiar with Appalachian Bible College. He went to Appalachian Bible College and met Amy the first day of the year there and proposed the last day of the year. And they got married, moved back to Michigan, and for 11 years Joshua served as an assistant pastor and worked full time and served as assistant pastor at Maranatha Baptist Church in Cedar Springs, Michigan, under 2 different church planters there. So his entire life has been tied in ministry and in with Continental Baptist Mission in some very unique ways. I would encourage you, if you use the internet at all, if you go to gocbm.org and you get to the website, you'll see a little Facebook emblem there, and then next to it is a YouTube emblem. If you go to click on that YouTube emblem, it'll take you to CBM Destination Missions. On CBM Destination Missions, you're going to find a time-lapse video for that Economo Walk project from start to finish. It's about an 8-minute video that snaps pictures from start to finish. There's a video on there that says The Invisible Finger of God. The church put together a really nice video as to how God provided for them to be able to be in that building. And Brad and I have worked together on church planting, church revitalization, church building videos. Our goal in the future is to be able to get some other videos up there explaining the need for missions in North America and encouraging churches to be discipling people in their churches, getting them grounded in the Word, and to be praying that God will bring them out into missions. We do need more church planters. Again, thank you for your faithful prayer and financial support for our ministry. After the morning service and at lunchtime, whatever, if you have questions, I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you may have. We count it a privilege, but also we look at it as our responsibility as representing you in missions to answer any question you may have. Thank you.
I have a question. Since Nancy and yourself started in this program with Continental, how many square foot of renovation and building have you oversaw, do you think?
I haven't ever thought to do the square feet. There's been, a few years ago, I figured it up at that time, and there were 60 plus churches that we've been involved with in some aspect of their building ministry, but I haven't ever figured it up square foot. That would be interesting.
Well, the reason I asked that question, you've been a great steward because you figure building costs, I don't know, $200 square foot, I don't know what it is now, but you've oversaw a lot of God's money spent wisely.
Yes. And we're able to do it because First Baptist Church in North Branch and individuals and other churches so that we go to help the church, that they don't have to pay wages to have that done. Right up front, most of the time with the drawings, we save the church because we do the construction drawings start to finish. We have to get an architect or a structural engineer involved towards the end to do enough hands-on supervision so they can both legally and ethically seal them. But it's not unusual for us to save $10,000 to $20,000 for the church just with the legwork we put into the drawings and stuff up front for them. So yes, and we're thrilled to do it, and we're doing it by God's grace. I see our time's gone. I'll just make one more quick statement here. I'm often asked, are you an architect? Are you an engineer? How are you doing this? I graduated from Emily City High School. I'm doing this by the grace of God, and I won't go into all the story of how the training that God put me through to get me to where I'm at here today, but it's pretty unique working with a couple of different architects that taught me how to draw professional building plans while we were on site helping the church. Thank you.